There is a strange moment nobody prepares you for. Someone disappoints you and you feel nothing. A person stops texting and you don't chase them. Someone you once couldn't imagine losing walks out of your life and somehow you sleep normally that night. No tears, no anger, not even hatred. Just nothing. At first, it almost feels like strength. You tell yourself you've matured, you finally learned how to stop caring. But then something unsettling happens. You realize it's not just them. You're slowly losing interest in everyone. Messages sit unanswered. Friendships feel exhausting. People's problems irritate you. Affection feels invasive. And the disturbing question begins to form. What happened to me? Because you remember being different. You used to care too much. And that may be exactly why you feel nothing now. Because sometimes the person who stopped caring was once the person who cared until their mind could no longer afford it. The person you used to be. Think about who you were before you became emotionally distant. Maybe you noticed tiny changes in people's voices. A shorter text could ruin your entire afternoon. If someone you loved became quiet, your brain immediately started investigating. Did I do something? Are they angry? Are they leaving? You remembered birthdays. You checked on people. You gave second chances to people who had already shown you what they were capable of. And perhaps the most exhausting part, you didn't simply feel your own emotions. You absorbed everyone else's. Walk into a room filled with tension and your body noticed before anyone spoke. Someone you loved was upset, and suddenly it became your responsibility to fix the atmosphere. This is where the story of emotional detachment often begins. Not with a cold person, but with an emotionally overloaded one. The human nervous system has limits. When stress repeatedly activates the body's threat systems, the brain and body adapt. The response isn't always dramatic panic. Sometimes people become exhausted, withdrawn, emotionally blunted, or less responsive. In simple terms, your mind can begin reducing emotional engagement when emotional engagement repeatedly feels costly. Imagine touching a hot surface. You pull your hand away. Now imagine the pain is emotional. Every time you trust, you're betrayed. Every time you explain yourself, you're misunderstood. Every time you become attached, you become terrified of losing the person. Eventually, the mind starts learning something dangerous. Connection equals pain. And once the brain associates emotional closeness with threat, detachment can start feeling like safety. But this is where it gets more complicated, because you may not consciously decide to stop caring. Your behavior can change before you understand why. When caring becomes expensive. Emotions have a psychological cost, not because emotions are bad, but because emotional involvement requires attention. You think about people, you anticipate their reactions, you interpret their silence, you replay conversations, you imagine future conversations that haven't even happened. And when you're deeply attached to someone unpredictable, your brain can become trapped in a cycle of monitoring. One day they're affectionate, the next day they're distant. One moment you feel secure, hours later you're wondering if the relationship is collapsing. Psychology has long recognized the power of unpredictable rewards. When positive experiences arrive inconsistently, uncertainty can intensify attention and anticipation. It's one reason inconsistent relationships can become so mentally consuming. You're not only experiencing the person, you're constantly trying to predict them. Imagine staring at your phone at 2:17 in the morning. The room is dark. Your screen illuminates your face. You open the conversation, read the last message, close it, open it again. You check whether they're online. You tell yourself you don't care. 5 minutes later, you're checking again. That isn't peace, that's vigilance. And vigilance is exhausting. After enough emotional strain, something can change. The message arrives. You see their name, but this time you don't feel the same rush. You place the phone down, and strangely, you don't even want an explanation anymore. People around you may think you've become heartless, but sometimes what they're witnessing is emotional exhaustion. You didn't stop caring in one night. You spent your care slowly, conversation by conversation, disappointment by disappointment, until one day you reached for an emotion and there was almost nothing left. But emotional exhaustion is only part of the explanation, because there's another psychological process happening underneath, and most people never notice it. Your brain is a prediction machine. Your brain is constantly learning patterns. Who feels safe? Who creates uncertainty? What should be approached? What should be avoided? It uses past experience to anticipate what may happen next. This is useful when you're crossing a road. It's more complicated in relationships. Suppose you open up to someone. They use your vulnerability against you. You open up to another person. They dismiss your feelings. You trust someone else. They disappear when you need them. One experience doesn't automatically define everyone, but repeated experiences can influence expectations. Slowly, a belief begins forming, not necessarily in words, more like a feeling. Don't expect too much. Then it becomes, don't reveal too much. Then, don't need anyone. And eventually, don't care. This is how emotional protection can disguise itself as personality. You start saying things like, I'm just a private person. I don't get attached. People come and go. I prefer being alone. And maybe some of that is genuinely who you are. But sometimes these sentences are psychological armor, because saying, I don't need anyone, feels more powerful than admitting, needing people has frightened me before. That's the hidden bargain behind emotional detachment. If I don't become attached, you can't abandon me. If I don't expect anything, you can't disappoint me. If I don't show emotion, you can't use it against me. If I stop caring first, I never have to experience being the one who cared more. And suddenly, detachment isn't just about emotion, it's about control. The control hidden inside I don't care. There is power in appearing unaffected. Watch social interactions closely. The person who cares less often appears to have more control. In dating, people hide how quickly they reply. They deliberately delay messages. They pretend not to be interested. They avoid saying, I miss you first. Why? Because emotional investment creates vulnerability. The moment you admit that someone matters to you, you reveal something. They now have the ability to affect you. And for someone who has been emotionally hurt, that can feel dangerous. So the ego creates a new strategy. Become unreadable. You can reject me? Fine, I'll act like I never wanted you. You can ignore me? Fine, I'll disappear completely. You can hurt me? Fine, you'll never see the wound. From the outside, this looks like confidence. But confidence and emotional shutdown are not the same thing. A confident person can care and survive disappointment. An emotionally defended person may need to stop caring to feel safe. Read that again psychologically. One says, your actions may hurt me, but I trust myself to recover. The other says, I must prevent myself from feeling anything you can damage. Those are completely different internal worlds. And this explains why some people suddenly become distant after one apparently minor event. The event wasn't always minor to their nervous system. It may have been the final confirmation of a pattern they had been quietly tracking for months. The canceled plan, the ignored message, the dismissive joke, the moment they needed you and you weren't there. To you, it was Tuesday. To them, it was evidence. And once their mind decides the emotional investment is no longer worth the psychological cost, they don't always argue. Sometimes they simply go quiet. But here's the strange part. Emotional detachment can spread.
When you stop caring about everyone. At first, it's one person. You stop checking their profile. You stop wondering what they're doing. You stop rehearsing conversations with them in your head. Relief, finally. But then you start withdrawing from other people. A friend calls, you stare at the screen. You don't answer. Someone tells you about their problems. You listen, but internally you feel miles away. Family members ask why you're so quiet. You say you're tired, and perhaps you are, but it's a different kind of tired. Emotional fatigue can make connection feel like work. Every conversation feels like another demand, another person needing access to a part of you that already feels depleted. So you retreat. Your room becomes quieter. Your phone stays on silent. You become comfortable disappearing. And here's what makes this confusing. Isolation can initially feel peaceful. Nobody is disappointing you. Nobody is demanding an explanation. Nobody is changing their tone and forcing you to analyze what it means. It's just you. Silence, control, predictability. But the brain is incredibly good at repeating strategies that provide immediate relief. If avoiding people reduces discomfort today, avoidance becomes more tempting tomorrow. And over time, a coping strategy can become a pattern. You don't only avoid painful relationships, you start avoiding emotional intimacy itself. Good people approach you, and you feel suspicious. Someone genuinely cares, and you feel uncomfortable. A person asks, "How are you really doing?" And suddenly you want to escape the conversation, not because they did something wrong, but because emotional closeness has started activating your defenses. This is where people often make a painful mistake. They believe the absence of emotional intensity means they've healed, but numbness and peace can look surprisingly similar from the outside. Peace or numbness. Peace is quiet. Numbness is also quiet. That's why people confuse them. But there is a difference. Peace allows you to feel without being controlled by every emotion. Numbness can make feeling itself seem distant. Peace says, "I loved them, but I accept that it's over." Numbness says, "I don't want to feel anything about anyone." Peace still leaves room for joy, curiosity, affection, connection. Numbness can flatten the entire emotional landscape. The painful emotions become quieter, but sometimes so do the beautiful ones. Imagine turning down the volume on a speaker because the music is hurting your ears. You keep turning the dial, lower, lower, lower. Finally, the painful sound disappears, but so does everything else. This is why someone can say, "I'm finally unbothered," while privately wondering why nothing excites them anymore. They don't miss anyone, but they also don't feel deeply connected. They don't experience dramatic heartbreak, but affection feels strangely muted. They don't fear losing people as intensely because somewhere inside they stopped allowing themselves to fully have people. And that is the psychological price of extreme self-protection. The walls that keep pain outside can also make intimacy struggle to enter. But there's another layer, and this one begins much earlier than most people realize. The child who learned not to need. Picture a child walking into a room upset. Maybe they were bullied. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they simply needed comfort. They approach an adult, but instead of warmth, they hear, "Stop crying. You're too sensitive. Go to your room. It's not that serious." The child learns something, not intellectually, emotionally. My feelings create problems. So the child adapts. Next time they're hurt, they say nothing. People praise them. "You're so mature. You're so independent. You never cause trouble." And nobody asks why the child became so easy to manage. Years later, that child becomes an adult who disappears when they're struggling. They don't ask for help. They don't explain when they're hurt. They emotionally detach during conflict. And when someone says, "Why didn't you tell me?" they genuinely don't know how to answer because needing support never became emotionally natural. Self-sufficiency became survival. Attachment research helps explain why early relational experiences can shape how people approach closeness later in life. This doesn't mean childhood determines your destiny. Human beings are more complicated than that. But early emotional patterns can create templates, and some adults spend years following templates they never consciously chose. This is why a person can desperately want love, then become uncomfortable the moment they receive it. They want connection from a distance, but when someone gets close enough to truly see them, their defenses activate. They find faults, they become irritated, they lose interest, they convince themselves the person isn't right. Sometimes they're correct, but sometimes the real threat isn't the person, it's intimacy. Because intimacy asks you to do the one thing your mind learned to avoid: be emotionally reachable. And for someone who has survived by becoming unreachable, love can feel strangely similar to danger. Why do you become irritated by people's emotions? Have you ever noticed yourself becoming annoyed when someone is too emotional? They cry easily, they need reassurance, they openly admit that they miss people, and something inside you almost judges them. Why are they so needy? Why can't they control themselves? But psychological reactions are interesting. Sometimes the traits that irritate us most in others touch something unresolved in ourselves. Maybe you weren't allowed to need reassurance. Maybe nobody came when you cried. Maybe you had to regulate emotions alone.
So watching someone openly request comfort creates tension. They're doing what you taught yourself never to do: need, ask, reach. And somewhere deep inside, a forgotten part of you may be thinking, why do they get to be vulnerable when I had to become strong? This doesn't make you cruel, but it can reveal a hidden emotional wound. Sometimes contempt is covering discomfort. Sometimes irritation is protecting grief. And sometimes, I don't care about anyone is easier to say than, I no longer know how to feel safe while caring. That's the sentence beneath the sentence. And once you understand that, emotional detachment starts looking completely different. The dopamine problem. There's also a modern layer to this. Your brain lives in an environment of constant stimulation: swipe, scroll, message, notification, new person, new conversation, new profile, new story, new distraction. Human relationships are slow. They require patience, repair, awkward conversations, emotional uncertainty. But digital stimulation offers immediate novelty. Bored? Scroll. Lonely? Open an app. Uncomfortable? Watch another video. Thinking about someone? Distract yourself until the feeling becomes quieter. The problem isn't simply technology. The deeper issue is what happens when distraction becomes your primary method of emotional regulation. You never sit with disappointment long enough to understand it. You replace, you suppress, you stimulate, you move, and eventually you may become very good at escaping emotions without becoming good at processing them. This is one reason moving on quickly can be psychologically misleading. A new relationship, a new obsession, a new routine, a completely new identity. Everyone says, wow, you healed fast. But speed is not proof of healing. Sometimes movement is avoidance with better lighting. And when the distractions disappear, at 1:43 in the morning, when the room is silent, when there is nobody to impress, the emotions you thought were dead can suddenly return. Because ignored emotions don't always disappear. Sometimes they wait. The hidden signs you're not actually unbothered. The signs are often subtle. You stop explaining yourself completely, not because you've developed healthy boundaries, but because you assume nobody will understand. You cut people off at the first disappointment, not because the relationship is necessarily harmful, but because leaving feels safer than negotiating. You lose interest when someone becomes emotionally available, but become fascinated by emotionally distant people. You crave connection when you're alone, then feel suffocated when someone gets close. You say you hate drama, yet calm relationships feel strangely boring. You tell everyone you're fine, but you can't remember the last time you felt emotionally known by another human being. And perhaps the strangest sign, you miss the old version of yourself, the one who laughed harder, loved without calculating the risk, sent long messages, got excited. Maybe that version of you was naive, maybe they needed stronger boundaries, but sometimes in protecting ourselves from becoming that person again, we go too far in the opposite direction. We don't build boundaries, we build emotional fortresses, and there's a difference. A boundary has a door, a fortress assumes everyone is an enemy. The psychological twist. Now, here's the twist. You may not have stopped caring, you may have stopped showing your care to yourself. Think about it. If you genuinely didn't care, why are you questioning your detachment? Why do certain songs still make you uncomfortable? Why do you avoid specific memories? Why does one person's name still change something in your body for half a second? Why do you need to repeatedly tell yourself, I don't care? True indifference rarely needs constant rehearsal. Sometimes the phrase, I don't care, isn't a description, it's an instruction. You're telling your mind what you desperately want it to believe. Don't care, don't remember, don't reach out, don't become weak again. But suppression requires effort, and that effort can be mistaken for emotional strength. The deeper form of strength is more uncomfortable. It is being able to acknowledge, yes, I cared. Yes, that hurt me. Yes, part of me still remembers. And no, I don't have to return. You don't need to erase an emotion to make a healthy decision. You don't need to hate someone to leave them. You don't need to become cold to develop boundaries. And you don't need to stop caring about humanity because a few people mishandled your heart. This is the difference between detachment and emotional freedom. Detachment says, I must feel nothing. Emotional freedom says, I can feel this without abandoning myself. And perhaps that's the real goal. not becoming untouchable, but becoming someone who can be touched by life without being destroyed by every hand that lets go. So why did you suddenly stop caring about everyone? Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you've been emotionally overstimulated for too long.
Maybe disappointment trained you to lower expectations. Maybe isolation became easier than uncertainty. Maybe you learned very early that vulnerability was something people punished. Or maybe you've been calling it peace because you're afraid to admit how numb you've become. Only you can answer that. But tonight, notice something. When your phone becomes quiet, when the distractions stop, when you're alone with your thoughts, ask yourself one question. Do I genuinely not care anymore? Or have I simply become afraid of what caring costs me? Don't answer too quickly, because your first answer may be the one you've practiced. The second answer, the one that arrives in the silence, may tell you far more about yourself. And if this video put words to something you've never been able to explain, stay close to this channel. We explore the parts of human psychology people experience every day but rarely know how to name. Because sometimes understanding your mind doesn't immediately change what you feel. It simply shows you why you've been feeling it. And sometimes that's where the wall first begins to crack.